Hey, as a historian here, today I have a piece that's quite different from what I usually do. I recently visited the Game Developers Conference Play NYC in Manhattan, and I shot a little tour of the event, as well as a few interviews with some really interesting people, including a few game devs and the program administrator for the Game Center at NYU's Tisch campus in Brooklyn. If you've been enjoying what I do here, be sure to get subscribed. Your feedback on a video like this is pivotal for me. Do you like seeing content from me that branches outside the realm of RTS? Leave a comment below and let me know how you feel about this change of pace. That being said, let's get started with my visit to Play NYC 2023. So, taking it from the top, we have this cool little Play NYC logo projected onto the wall in the front lobby area. This is the view when you first enter the event. Loads of people everywhere enjoying the huge variety of titles for first looks, demos, and the like. This is a look down the right side of the floor plan. Here we have a shot of a VR game that looked to be pretty fun. Some really friendly and helpful members of the team helping people try out their game. Another title, Expedition Agartha, seemed to be getting some decent attention from passerbys. The game looked pretty interesting, and I wish I'd gotten a chance to try it. So next up, we have our first interview of the event with my friend Eric, the developer behind the upcoming title, The Spirits of Whispermoon. So Eric, we're here today at Play NYC 2023. How you feeling, man?
Hi, I'm excited. This is day 2 of Play NYC, and I'm here to show off my game.
That's fantastic. So tell me about your game, dude.
Right, so my game is called The Spirits of Whispermoon. It's a 2D classic Zelda style game. The twist here, though, is it's actually a co-op game online. So you can play with your partner, like a good friend, a sibling, if you're a parent-child, someone you can go through an adventure with.
What would you say is your main inspiration for the game?
Yeah, so my main inspiration was probably The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds. So this was a game I played in 2013 in college, and I was enjoying it a lot. And my main thought was, this game is a little lonely. I would love to have been playing it with like a partner at the time, and so that idea just kind of slowly grew over the years. And eventually, I decided to start making a game. And after a few years, it's starting to take life, and this is what we have now.
What would you say is the most important thing about your game that makes it unique and interesting?
I think there just isn't a lot of co-op games these days. And the few that are very, they're not made for co-op specifically. They might just be like a 1v1 game. I mean, a single-player game that just add a second character. They don't put in a lot of effort into it. Our idea here is that every character in our game that you play as is their own character. They have their own unique abilities. They have their own backstory, personality, their own goals. And you got to work together because they all have different abilities as well. So it's a real teamwork game.
What's your favorite ability to use in game?
Oh God, I have a bunch of ideas for one of my wind characters where she can blow like gusts of wind. But right now we're also planning on some other things where she could use her wind ability to fly across cliffs and that stuff. Maybe access inaccessible areas from other people, and then from there, you can unlock other parts of the level and stuff for the other characters.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So I know, obviously, you're a huge StarCraft fan.
Yeah.
Any ideas, mechanics, anything that might remind us of StarCraft in your game?
Yeah. So I actually had a lot of friends who were in the StarCraft community who played it, and what they were telling me is they liked progression to feel more intentional, the same way as when you get upgrades or tech in StarCraft, that it's not like you just you kill something and you find an upgrade. They wanted something to make it feel like you're you purposefully progress towards a goal. And so we were planning on an upgrade system where you have to get resources as well, and then you have to commit to getting an upgrade, and only after you going through a risk, then you can get the reward. It's not just a drop, So
that totally makes sense. It sounds like there's some real payoff there.
Yeah.
What would you say inspired you to become a game dev?
Honestly, I think I started programming when I was young. My first experience programming was probably making custom games in Brood War. So this was probably when I was, 11 or 12 playing StarCraft 1, and I was making maps with my friends. And like I thought it was really fun to just make experiences. And I guess like I became a programmer after that, like just subconsciously, because it just kind of clicked for me. But even after I became a programmer and like working at a full-time tech job, I still always had like this urge to like make games. I think partially this is also like, you know, I don't consider myself like a fully tech person per se. I'm kind of an artist too. You know, I've always been passionate about storytelling. I've, you know, been interested in art. I'm a musician as well. So like, you know, I think video game is the perfect mix of like, you know, all four of these combined, and it's like it's really cool to just craft that experience together.
That totally makes sense.
Yeah.
What are your expectations for the game? When do you think it's going to come out? How do you think it'll be received?
Right. So that's always a hard question to answer. Right now we're shooting for a Kickstarter by the end of the year. So hopefully in like 6 months though, we'll have something polished to be ready to show people. And then hopefully maybe another 6 months to a year after that, depending on how the Kickstarter goes.
What kind of capital do you think you'd have to raise to consider the Kickstarter successful?
Oh man, honestly, it's less about the capital. It's more about the amount of people who back it. You know, like I genuinely don't really need the money. Like I have enough savings myself. It's more so just validating that people are interested in the product, you know? And if people are interested, I'll commit my time and money to it myself.
In an ideal world, what game would people compare your game to?
You know, the same way Hollow Knight has like redefined the Castlevania series, I would love to have this game like redefine the classic Zelda series, where like the main series of the game has kind of gotten stale, and like hopefully an indie game will come in, swoop in, and like, you know, be the new standard, right?
Sweet. Well, thank you so much for the time, man.
Yeah, thank you.
You had a good experience here at Play New York City.
Yeah, thank you so much for interviewing.
Of course. The art director for the Spirits of Wissaroon was having a word with an interested fan, but I was able to grab him for a chat just a bit after. All right, so you are the art director for the Spirits of Wissaroon, working with Eric here. What was your name? Introduce yourself.
My name?
Yeah.
Oh, my name is Ziyang. I'm the Chinese-American illustrator who's based in New York City right now. I teach illustration, and in the meanwhile, I'm also the art director for Most Dangerous Game, and right now we're making the Spirit of Wissaroon right now.
That's fantastic. Number one, I love the art style. It's one of my favorite things I've seen about the game thus far. What would you say is your main inspiration for the overall art direction?
I think it's the craving of a novelty and the adventure. We wanted to base our vibe that it's very, very adventurous, but yet hiding a little bit hint of danger in them. So you see us using quite a lot of dark shading, very, very enthusiastic color, and that's what we're really going for in our posters, illustration, in-games, models, and that's what we are mainly shooting for.
What do you think makes the art style for this piece stand out compared to a lot of other titles?
I think it's like the symbols. A lot of time we wanted to play around with a lot of like representation in our stuff, right? For example, you know, I really wish that, you know, this big red moon can represent a very dangerous but adventurous, journey that's ahead of them. So you see, we're trying to discuss where is the edge for us to placing all of these metaphors and concepts, and I believe that's really what is going to make our art stand out from others.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What's your personal background in art design? How'd you get into illustration?
So I have always been an illustrator. I went to school at Minneapolis College of Art and Design for illustration. I've always been an avid storyteller. I published 2 of my children's books. And I met Eric actually in my personal training class for illustration. And that's how we connected for both, you know, share and mutual passions for storytelling. He happened to be a coder, and I, me as an illustrator, feel like I can lend in my power to really make this game happen. That's kind of how we started it and how I kind of joined on board for this thing.
Sweet, that's awesome, man.
Yeah, thanks.
Do you see yourself working on like future game projects?
I would say that, in my opinion, video game is the future of storytelling. Therefore, I believe that I'm going to keep working on future upcoming games and projects as well.
That's phenomenal. Thank you so much. I appreciate the input.
Of course. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Let's have a look at Eric getting smoked by one of the boss fights that he designed. Okay, so that wraps up my coverage for the Spirits of Wissaroon. Keep an eye out for that Kickstarter if you're interested. After this, I had the pleasure of running into Mateo from the NYU Game Center, so here's my word with him.
Yeah.
So, Mateo, thanks so much for taking the time, man. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you.
So, tell me about the program that you run.
Yes. So, the NYU Game Center Program Incubator is a program for developers, but game designers in general that have a project and they are based in New York State. And what we do basically, we offer that bridge between when you are like a student and when you wanna, have your game out in the world. There is like few years in that period that can be very critical, and we help the projects that are selected to fill that gap. So every year we select 5 games project. It's an open call that comes out in April, and we offer space. So for 2 months, you're gonna be in the game center, NYU Game Center, and then we offer like a little money and then advisory. So basically we have people from the industry that become your executive producers. So they can give you advice and help you get your game out and published.
Awesome.
Yeah.
How'd you end up getting involved with that program?
I'm a game designer myself. I come originally from Italy. I moved here 5 years ago, and I've been teaching in a lot of universities, and the NYU Game Center is like the most famous. And so when I saw the job, I wanted to apply because it's something that is really it's a passion of mine to help others. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
How do you choose the projects that you bring on?
It's the advisory board. We have an advisory board of 60 people that are from the industry, and we have a pitch night. So all the projects, they do their pitch, and then the advisory board votes, and then we select the 5 games based on that.
That's fantastic. Have any of the projects that you have supported become like big commercial successes?
Yes. In the past, we have like games like Ape Out or like A Memoir Blue that were picked. Like, for example, A Memoir Blue is out from Annapurna Interactive. And lately, this year, Despelote, which is like a game that is going to be out from Panic, which are the publisher of Firewatch. They were in the incubator in 2019, and they won the Tribeca Special Mention. So they were like in that selection. So they're going to come out soon. Usually, the time that takes a game to come out, it can be like 2 or 3 years after they are in the program. Yeah.
Sure, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Hey, you get 50% there, but then that last 50% probably takes some real effort.
Yes. We are happy to help at the beginning of that process. Yeah.
Yeah. No, how do you measure success with the projects that you bring on?
That's a good question. We pick like project that the advisory board picks project that are, the team is solid, the team should be strong, they should be innovative in some way, and they should have like some commercial/community around them. So, for example, every game can select their own goal for the year that they stay with us. So we have, for example, one game that is a tabletop role-playing game, so non-digital, non-digital, and their goal is to have a Kickstarter campaign at the end of the process. So every project is different. We try to have like different approach to different games. Yeah.
That makes sense. What kind of support do you guys offer outside of monetary?
We give them space, 2 months at the game center, and then the program goes remote. And then we select one executive producer, which is a person from the industry that stays with the project for 1 year. So they're gonna be like, we call the executive producer, we said that is the biggest fan, but also the most critical person of the project. So usually project, they get this relationship out of the incubator, which is really important.
That sounds incredibly valuable.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that about does it. Thanks so much for answering my questions, Mateo. It's great to meet you.
I'm happy, like, there are also some designers here, so I'm happy, like, to pass the ball to them.
Yeah, most definitely.
Thank you.
Next, I have a conversation with Swati, a developer working with the Game Center on the game Normal Bad Sex. So Swati, thanks so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Excited to be here,
Yeah, of course. So how'd you get connected with NYU Game Center?
So I did my undergrad in India, and I really wanted to do game design for my master's. I did animation in my undergrad. And so I was looking at some of the best colleges in the US for game design, and NYU is one of them. So I ended up applying, and I got in, and I did my MFA at NYU. I just graduated this May. And after that, my thesis project got into the incubator program. So I'm continuing to work with NYU. I'm at Play NYC through NYU, you know. So
That's fantastic.
yeah.
Are you more on the developer side or art direction or?
So the game itself was designed by all three of us. But during production, we all took different roles. I mostly did the like UI art direction for the game, and also like the back end UI things. My partner Nusha did all the programming for the game, and my other other partner Sophie, she worked on the assets for the game. So it was very much a collaborative effort. Like none of us could have done it without each other. And we also made it in the course of just a semester instead of over a year because all of us were working on different projects at the beginning of the year. But it ended up really coming together and like taking us to incubator, you know.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. What was your experience like working with the Game Center?
I think the Game Center is a phenomenal school, especially like the professors really want you to succeed and they're very on your side. Like you can generally ask them for any kind of help and they will help you. Like it's very sweet. And so I think that's my biggest gain from the Game Center was like the connection with all the professors and with the students. Like my peers are some of the best designers I've met, you know, so it's been very nice to work with all of them. And also as someone that was switching career paths, I think it really helped me learn the like foundational basic skills that I needed before getting into the industry.
For sure. So was there a big culture shock for you moving from India to the US?
I think a little bit, but nothing, like there was always media, right? Like I see so much American media that I'm like comfortable with all of that. I think a lot of it was about New York specifically. I think I was like, oh, New York is different, you know? And I feel like you need to kind of learn how New York works to become comfortable in it, you know? So yeah, I love New York now. I think it's a wonderful city.
Yeah.
But coming here, originally I was like, oh my God, it's so scary, you know? Things are just happening. And then eventually I was like, no, it's just, the city's like this.
Yeah,
you know?
no, that's sweet. So tell me more about your game. What was the
Yeah.
original inception?
So the game is called Normal Bad Sex. The idea is that it's a playable podcast and it's a real conversation between two people. So it's a non-fiction video game, which we have personally not seen before, so we wanted to do that. And we picked the topic of normal bad sex because we wanted to talk about the nuance of intimacy, like things that are uncomfortable but non-traumatic that don't have a space to be discussed right now. Is generally the point of this story we're telling. We're planning on making a couple of episodes that are around like 5 to 10 minutes each. The first episode demo is out now and it's ready. You know, it's on our itch page. And yeah, we're planning on getting the others out soon, hopefully in quick succession so that it can be like a package that you get. Yeah.
How many hours would you say it takes you to make a 5-minute episode in terms of development?
So I think the process, a lot of people expect you to just work for those 5 minutes, but it's very much not like that. Like the podcast we recorded was about 40 minutes long, and then we cut that to 16 minutes. And we actually made the original game for 16 minutes, and then realized it was just very slow. And so we cut that even shorter and made it 8 minutes, you know? So it was a lot of like work that we put into that 16-minute version that got wasted, that got cut. But we think of it as like a learning process, you know? You kind of have to discard parts of the process. Like, I think that's fundamental to game design is iterativeness. Like every time you playtest, you learn something new about your game and you're like, oh, that should be different, you know? So I think that's the beauty of game design almost.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Are there any other games that you've played or seen that remind you of your game?
That remind me of my game? I think there are like a couple of big games that are in the same vein. There's a game I played recently. The person's name is losing off my mind right now, but it's called Vaginismus. It's about having sex while having a chronic illness where it's like difficult to have sex. So it does a similar thing as our story where it's not like explicit and about the weird parts of it. It's about the humanness of this experience, right? So yeah, and it's like a cute story where you're playing through this person's real life adventures, you know.
Would you say that it's more like drama focused or humor?
I think it's more drama focused. Yeah. Like, I think our game is honestly in the middle because there's a lot of jokes that they crack, but there's also definitely moments of like complete sadness and quiet. So, yeah, that's kind of the beauty of telling a real story is that it's very complicated, you know?
Do you want to pursue a career like forever in game development?
Yeah, I think so. I think I definitely want to get better and more involved in like art direction for games and 2D art and games in general. And so I do want to continue working on this, and like we really want to pitch it to podcast studios as like a option to gamify their content, like make an 8-minute snippet of your podcast, you know, and things like that. So we'll see where it goes, but
That's a really cool concept that like you could like source pieces
Yeah.
from other people's material
Yeah.
with their consent and,
Yeah.
and then make a game around it. That's actually really cool. That's a great idea, I think. But thanks so much. I think that about does it for us.
yeah, thank you so much.
Last up, we have my lengthy talk with Josh, the solo dev behind the exciting-looking game Godwalker.
Nice to meet you. Okay. This is so funny that I'm like, are you recording right now?
Yeah.
That's so funny that I'm like sitting over here alone in the corner of it. Does it look good?
Yeah, looks nice.
Rad, dude.
Sweet.
Cool.
So, Josh, thanks so much for taking the time today, man. I really appreciate it.
Do you want me to look at you really quick?
You can look at me.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I hope
mean,
you
a
don't cut
horrible
this out.
interview,
I hope you don't cut this out.
Of course. Oh, no, you won't. I'll put it at the end as like a blooper.
I'm gonna send this to like my family. Yeah, go for it.
So we just had a little bit of a conversation about your game, Godwalker. Tell me about it.
Yeah, so Godwalker is, it harkens back to some of the older shooters from like the 90s and early 2000s, like Quake and Doom, where you're sort of focusing a lot more on movement, right? And like using interesting weapons and exploring worlds and areas and discovering new fun interactions that you can do. It's also a roguelike, so for people unfamiliar with what that is, it's like a game that you play multiple times, and every time that you play, something slightly different changes. And that's a really big part of it, is like forcing the player to play differently in different spaces. The main core idea behind the game is that it is a shooter like this, where the faster you play, the stronger you get. So as you get faster and faster, the screen freaks out. And as the screen freaks out, you get so many more like damage bonuses, and you move faster, and you jump faster, and so many more, like just a ton of different stuff happens. So you're incentivized to play quickly. And that forces you to learn how to play well with all the different weapons, right? So whatever tools you have available, you have to solve that puzzle, you have to engage with those enemies, and you can't just run and hide. The only way to actually heal, unlike other shooters, is to get in there and to hit the enemies and go hard, right? So if you're low on HP, instead of hiding in a corner, you're like striving to save your roguelike run. And that to me is the kind of game that I really wanted to make.
That sounds a lot of fun and very engaging. Could you explain the God meter a bit to me?
Yeah, for sure. So the way that works, as you deal damage and get kills, the God meter fills with God Juice, which is the official title of what that is. When it's full, you can activate God mode. When you're in God mode, there are 5 different levels, and as you get faster and faster, the God mode increases, right? And that gives you more strength and more power. So your damage goes up, and your speed goes up, and your fire rate increases, and all these different elements kind of come into play, and it makes you go harder, right? The problem is that as you're getting faster and faster, that meter is also depleting faster and faster. So if you ever get to 0 on that meter, you're out, you're done, you have to start over. So it's kind of a gamble, right? But if you can keep it up, I've seen some of the best players play this game, and they will just go crazy. They will be in the highest level of God mode the entire time, which is the name of the game, it's Godwalker. And they'll just be like killing everything, they'll go from room to room, they will go to the shop and they'll shop fast. They'll be like, I want this, and they'll buy it, and they'll leave.
Yeah.
Which is so dumb to me, and I love it. I love it so much. But yeah, that's how that mechanic works. Yeah.
Awesome. So you mentioned that there's an element of unique gameplay with each playthrough.
Yeah.
Is there an element of like procedural generation, or how does that work? What makes each playthrough unique?
So I experimented with procedural generation a lot. There are procedural elements, but not procedural generation. So for example, I hope anybody watching this played like Quake or Doom, or even a game like Dusk, right? A newer one, where you are playing through a level and you're fighting enemies, and then as you're fighting them, a door opens, or a wall goes down, or like, part of the map like opens up and it changes as you play. This was kind of coined as a weird, like, gimmicky marketing term by Battlefield 4 as Levolution, right? But I want you to imagine Levolution, but the levels are changing in different ways, even if you've played the same one multiple times. So one room that I have, for example, the lava will fill the room at one point. It could be at the very beginning. It could be at the very end. In the midst of that, there are platforms that are coming out and going away and changing as you play the game. So there's lots of different things at play that are like changing. So even if you played a map before inside the roguelike, playing it again warrants a different interaction. Getting the lava at the very beginning means that you have to dodge it. You have to move around it throughout the entire time you're playing. But getting it at the very end means that you are fighting the hardest enemies in that room while also dealing with a bunch of lava everywhere, right? But only for a short amount of time. So it's a very different kind of experience, I think. So those are the procedural elements that I'm messing with. It's like that and the randomized weapons too, yeah.
That makes sense. That sounds like a really good way to spice stuff up while keeping an element of familiarity, overall.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Is it only PvE, or will there be a PvP element as well?
It's only PvE for now, because I'm a solo developer. So I need to scope the game down to ensure that I can finish it. If I end up getting picked up by a publisher or something else changes in development, I would love to add like PvP modes, classic like Quake, right? Like everybody loves Quake 2 multiplayer. I'm going to Long Island Metro Games Festival next week, and they're setting up a whole zone where you can just play Quake for like an hour.
That's awesome.
I think that's so cool. I grew up on Halo 3. I grew up on Halo 3 ODST Firefight. I love these elements where you're playing cooperatively to fight enemies and just to like fight each other, right? So if that's something that I can add in the future at some point, I would love to. Unfortunately, it's just way out of scope for my project because I am doing this kind of on my own dime and on my own time. It's really hard to justify adding new features to the game.
Sure.
Yeah.
What would you say are your long-term goals for the game?
I would love to complete it. I'd love to get it out on Steam. I'd love to share it with the community. So far, everyone has been so loving and inviting. It's really wonderful to make something and then just somebody plays it and really enjoys it. There was a kid here who knew about the game, which I've never had happen before. He said he saw it on TikTok and he played it for 3.5 hours to try and beat it and win a poster, right? He went home last night and beat it. And his mom came today and said, look, I have proof that he beat the game. Can we have the poster? And I was like, of course you can.
That's incredible.
Of course you can. He beat it at 2 a.m.
That is awesome.
I know. It's the most insane thing to me. I love it so much, right? There's members of my community who will get a new build and then figure out a speedrun strategy in 15 minutes. And I'll keep patching them out, but they'll find new ones. It's just so, I just love it so much. Everyone's just so passionate and just so nice about just they really enjoy the thing. And I really enjoy sharing it with them. And I think that's invaluable personally.
No doubt. So are you from New York?
Yeah, I live in Brooklyn right now. I grew up in Connecticut, but I moved here for my master's degree program. And now that I'm done, I am now a game developer in the city. That's
awesome.
what I'm doing here. Yeah.
So is this like a personal project, then you do game development for another company, or?
I've worked for a few different companies in the past. Right now, I am kind of looking for my next position. I just finished one another. I have a very small studio that's separate from this work. And we make educational games, and we do stuff like that. One of the games that we just made was a finalist for an award show for educational games. Really, really cool. Shout out to the entire team on AOS 503. That was awesome. And yeah, I've just been looking around for a few different things. This was also part of my master's program. This was my master's thesis, is what Godwalker was. So that might explain why I have a lot of very specific opinions on a lot of different, very weird topics.
Yeah.
But yeah.
What made you become a game developer?
One of my earliest memories is turning on our 1998 Dell PC with 128 megabytes of video RAM, playing Roller Coaster Tycoon 2 at 800 by 600 in my parents' living room. And I just remember having this experience and realizing that there were things going on in this space that I was now a part of and contributing to and controlling, and it was simulated, but it wasn't real. And it could go on for as long as I wanted to, and there could be as many of these spaces theoretically as I wanted to. And it blew my mind that this was just happening inside of a computer, right? That all of these rules and pieces and systems and ideas, which I didn't comprehend at all when I was a kid, right? Of course not. But I mean, then picking up Spyro on the PS1 and just literally spending hours running around and be like, wow, there's flowers and trees and water. And then I go to the desert and then I you burn down the tents and the guys are taking a shit instead of it, right? It's that kind of stuff where it's this world is more than just me, but I'm a huge player in it. And I think the thing that really made me become a designer specifically, oh my gosh, the pivotal moment I think was when I started playing Halo 3 and Forge was a map that was a mode that you can make maps in, right? You can make Halo maps and play them with your friends. I made a map, it was really simple. It was just a bunch of bridges connected on top of barrels and shit, and you just run around and you shoot your friends and whatever, and you play it. And I remember one day I made that map, and I asked somebody I didn't really know if he'd like to play it with me, and he said, sure, let me get 5 more people. And I also didn't know them. And I was too embarrassed. And I was like, oh no, my friend made this. I didn't make this. My friend made this. And they really liked it. They played it for like 2 hours. And I was like, whoa, that's so weird that you can make a thing and people enjoy it. And it was just a really dumb experience that I thought was really, really funny. And that was when I was like, maybe I should have told him that I made it. Because but that was the first time that I ever had made like a game or something, so to speak. And it inspired me to be like, what other things can I make? What other things can I explore? Why was that fun, right? What's fun about Halo? And like, why do I enjoy it? And it kind of got me on this ball rolling of like critical thinking of like games and like how they're made and what makes them good. And that really, I think, was the first step in me becoming a designer. I think when I played years later, I played Breath of the Wild, and that game blew my mind of like what games could be. I think I was finishing high school at that point, maybe a little bit later. I was starting undergrad perhaps. And I just remember playing it and thinking like, this is like everything I love, right? It's a set of rules that contribute to a space that add this wide open complexity. The thing that I loved the most was the cooking system. And that alone blew my mind. I was like, whoa, you can just make a meal and you can make another thing. And if I put the logic of like milk and eggs and flour into a thing, it's a cake. And then like you put oil and rice in, it becomes fried rice. It's like,
Yeah.
really good rules that make something interesting.
For sure.
And yeah, I just really loved it. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I experienced that a lot in. Have you ever played Project Zomboid?
I have played Project Zomboid, yeah.
A lot of like similar logical decisions there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That game is really intense.
Yeah.
It's really intense.
My buddy and I have been putting a lot of hours into it, so it's been a lot of fun like over the last few months. So if you could just snap your fingers and work at a game development company or a publisher, who would you work at?
You know, it's really funny because I've submitted like hundreds of job applications, but I haven't really thought about that. I don't know. It's a really hard question to answer. I think like there are some like big dumb answers, right? Like Bungie in 2007, but I don't think anyone wants to really work there, right? There's like, you know, like Devolver is such an amazing company, but I actually have no idea what it's like to publish with them. And like working for Valve would be really, really cool, but I'm worried that I would never get anything done, right? It's really, really difficult to build things there. There are all these different elements to that question that I think that I have to consider a lot. And ultimately, I think the answer comes down to like, am I making something cool? Am I happy? And, you know, is it a place that I can actually influence and be a positive force in the industry, right? Like, I'm not going to sell my game until it's done. I'm going to put it out for free in early access, right? It's going to be, you're going to play it for free until it's finished. Once it's done, I'll ask you to pay money for it, but I'm not in the business of selling unfinished products. And I think that if I could have a position where I would be happiest, it would be one in which I could influence the industry in a positive way for a franchise or a style or a genre that I love, to say, let's make something really unique and really good. Let's not make something that's just a really highbrow, like dumb AAA budget thing that wastes people's time and has really bad gameplay. Let's just like make something really fucking cool, right? I think that would be my ideal position.
How do you feel about the influence of crypto on the gaming market?
How do I feel about the influence of crypto on the gaming market? I think a lot of things. I have a friend, she did NFT art for a while, which I know is adjacent to crypto and not specifically crypto. But yeah, I mean, she's a 2D artist, and it's notoriously difficult to make a really big living as a 2D artist. Using NFTs and using crypto, she was able to actually make enough money to pay off her student loans. I think that's really fantastic.
Yeah.
That is the minority. I do think that crypto as a whole, the first year that it started existing, had undone the entire amount of progress that the United States had made in green energy and solar, or specifically solar panels. That's a stat that I learned a while ago. I think that crypto as a medium is something that is created for people who want to use crypto, and asking people who are not interested in it to use it is going to result in a lot of negative controversy. I think that the idea of Web3 gaming in games is also going to result in the lack of engaging and fun experiences, and the reason why we truly love playing games, right? It's the feeling that you get when you're playing Mario Galaxy and you launch out of a star cannon for the first time and the music is swelling and you're spinning through the air and you land on a planet and you learn what it is from just hearing the sounds and looking at the colors. Why on earth would I want to have some kind of currency tied to my performance in a video game if it doesn't mean anything? It's just so that someone else can make money, right? And I think that's my true opinion on it. It's incredibly lucrative if an artist is able to actually gain the money that they should. Every artist deserves $1 million for everything that they make, right? I think that everyone should be compensated fully, but that's not the case. That's not the case for the majority of crypto users. That's not the majority of the case for the amount of NFT users that there are. The energy offset is terrible for the environment, and I think that it really takes away from what we think games. From what I think games and what I think games should really strive to be, which is experiences that make you feel an emotion that the designer loves. It's an emotion that brings pleasure to you. You shouldn't sit down to play like Call of Duty because you should sit down to play it because it makes you feel good. You play Project Zomboid because the strength and idea of survival and having to really critically think about every choice you make is fun. It's fun because it's hard, right? Like, yeah. Godwalker is fun because you're going fast and shooting things. I don't think crypto is not a fun thing because it makes you then involve your wallet in what you're doing, and that is barely an inch away from just gambling. Yeah. Right? Like going to Mohegan Sun for the free drinks and the flashy lights is great, but knowing when to walk away from the table is too.
Absolutely. And it's hard to walk away from the table when it's at home.
I agree. Exactly. Yeah.
But I think that about does it. Thanks so much for your time, man.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I hope that people like the interview. I hope that if anybody I know is watching, hi, major shout out. Anybody from the convention, thank you so much for coming to play my game. I really appreciate getting interviewed as well by the StarCraft historian. That's crazy. I remember I was one of the first. I got a Windows laptop in like 2010. I still have it, and the only game that it could play well, that I could play with my friends, was StarCraft 2.
Yeah.
And I was like a really scummy Zerg Rush player. And I'm sure none of them will ever see this, but I always felt so good. It was basically like just the fastest, most aggressive burn that I could possibly do. It's the only way I could fucking win.
Yeah. So for like the first 2 months that I played StarCraft 2, I decided, the photon cannon.
I think so, yeah.
So it's just
it's been a while, but I think so.
It's just a static defense thing.
Okay.
And so I would just wall in my base with static defense.
Yeah.
And I thought that protected me, and I just couldn't get that out of my head. They're like, no, you have to expand. You have to get more resources. So for literally almost 2 months, I just did that like 500 times. It was really
crazy.
Insane.
Yeah, that's crazy. Well, thank you so much for the interview. It was really great meeting you.
I finished up my day over at Drip Coffee, where my friend Diego made me some absolutely incredible single origin pour overs. This place is no joke, going so far as to do little stuff like purge the grinder with a bean or two between coffee varietals. Very nice end to a great day. Thanks for coming along this journey with me. Well, that's all I've got for you today, folks. I don't know what this video really even was. Part event coverage, part interviews, part vlog. Like I said earlier, your feedback is so important for me when making content like this, which is off the beaten path for my channel. Let me know how you feel about this one in the comments down below, but otherwise get subscribed and excited for my return to my normal format next week.